All right, guys, welcome back to PacWest Bigfoot. This is David, and got some more interviews coming out. I hope you guys enjoyed the last two interviews I've had. As a matter of fact, Linda, if you're out there, if you could send me those pictures that you have for the last interview that we were discussing a little bit, some of the pictures that you've taken, I'd greatly appreciate that. We want to share that out here. I got a billion people asking me for it. There you go. I'll ask you on the show here. That way. Yeah. Anyways, clear throat. We're drinking water today. However, I will tell you this Sasquatch coffee. Get it while you can. Telling you, it's awesome stuff. All right. Anything new with PacWest Bigfoot? Nothing right now. As I've mentioned before, the first week of April, expect a really awesome page to come out on the website here. It's going to be kind of a resources page for nonfiction books that I've loved to read, fiction books as well, and also some links to some very popular places. Wanted to let you also know that a good friend of mine on here, from Monster X Radio, Gunnar Monson, also the owner of Sasquatch Coffee Company. I'll tell you right now, him and his friends and pals over there at Monster X Radio have an awesome a member subscription program coming out where they're going to be putting out quite a few podcasts every single month, interviews, updates, news. This stuff is going to be like really like just you're talking about people who are part of like the Olympia Project and some of these other great research groups out here. I know just about every research group out here is awesome, but I'm telling you right now, they've got this great, awesome thing about to happen, and I really honestly believe that you guys ought to at least check it out, and I will let you know when it's there. So with that, beyond that, let me get a sip of water real quick, and I'll put you on mute. And we're back again, and we're gonna get on with this week's PacWest Bigfoot encounter story. Running into Bigfoot on the North Umpqua River. Real quick, before I start this story, this one was actually given to me firsthand, not in an email, not in a message. The person I've met. I am a local and a native of the town of Glide and the Douglas County area. I've been here forever and a day, you could say. But never, ever in my life did I see or experience anything like I did that day while fishing up past Idleyld Park. It was a Bigfoot, and it was real. Like the others here on PWB and other platforms to get our voices and encounter stories out here, I too grew up with the stories of Bigfoot or Sasquatch roaming this awesome and beautiful part of the world. But up to that day, I've never believed a word of it, period. That all changed, however, one late morning while fishing on the North Umpqua River in 1998, when I saw something that scared the life out of me and tried to chase me out of the area I was in. Bigfoot in the North Umpqua River. I still live just outside of the Glide area today. However, I keep my fishing to either in my boat or near more populated and popular areas for fishing along the North and South Umpqua River, and for the very obvious reasons you'll learn. I have a friend. He is part of a native tribe nearby. He has told me of the stories of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and from the native perspective, it is seen or understood, I take it, as something as natural as the landscape here in the Umpqua Basin, like deer or black bear or cougars or the trees themselves. I never questioned him about it. I simply listened to the stories and enjoyed them. Never in my life did I think they were real until I was scared off by one while fishing in the North Umpqua one early morning back in 1998. I know what I saw and what I heard at first, and why I now listen intently to the noises coming from the woods anywhere in southern Oregon when out and about in them, period. Here's what happened out of Idlewild Park, near Idlewild, near one of my then favorite little fishing holes along the river. A place to this day I have never returned physically, only floated past on a boat, and nervously at that. My wife hates fishing. I may be from here, but my wife is from sunny Southern California. We met when I was stationed in San Diego 2 years before I got out. We married, then moved back up to Oregon. And do not get me wrong, she loves it here and loves being in the outdoors even today. However, while she'll eat fish. She is not a fisherman. She hates the slimy stink, and more than that, she hates dealing with bait. But to each his own. Fishing got me out of the house then and now. She goes to the gym in Roseburg a few times a week with her best friend from church, and I have the river. So that is my life at home. Today, when I go out fishing alone, however, I stay close to more populated places or on my boat. Fact is, when you see something like this, a Bigfoot, you do get a sense of how vulnerable you are out here, and that you are not the only and other, or you not the only, but the other apex predator. And yes, I believe this thing would have harmed me if I did not leave the area. Here's exactly what happened. Oh, and keep my last name out of it, Dave. Fishing the North Umpqua with Bigfoot. There's a bridge up past Idleyld Park area. Basically, I was on the south side of the river, up above Deadline Falls. Locals will know this place. Good fishing up there. Anyways, I was going to make a day out of it as my wife was actually out of town for a few days as she had a women's retreat with some friends at church over in Bandon, Oregon she was attending. Yes, it was a man's weekend, I suppose, and this man was going fishing as often and as long as possible. Our one and only child, well, she was off on her second term at what had just become Southern Oregon University. Before, I guess it was called SOSC, or Southern Oregon State College, in Ashland, Oregon. Either way, it was just me and the dog, oh, and my wife's cat. So fishing, Friday and Saturday, were a given. And I mean from sun up to sundown, if I could. Matter of fact, I just I left just before sunup that Friday morning. It was late fall, and I had just a couple weeks left to get some trout fishing in. I did not. I did do the steelhead thing. That was winter fishing. This was fall and for sport only. Well, for the most part. I did take what I could if it was legal. That morning was one of the first of the colder mornings we'd start to see here in this part of the Pacific Northwest. Pretty typical. Low clouds, foggy, a bit of frost, and yes, damp as a baby's diaper. I crossed the bridge just before dawn. I parked, gathered together my fishing equipment, my backpack with food and water, and of course some bait, and headed out down the trail. I walked beyond the main trail and followed another game-like trail that people used too, and about 200 yards beyond the bridge. It was about 200 yards beyond the bridge itself. The walk was pretty quiet, even for a forest just before daybreak. Yes, there was some light, but I had bought a flashlight and used it until my eyes adjusted. As I said, it was pretty quiet, too quiet in fact. The rush of the cold river water could be heard, but no bugs. No owls, birds, or even squirrels arguing amongst each other as they usually do at that time of the day. What I did hear about 2 minutes into my walk, however, was a branch break not too far off the trail to the south of me. It was a pretty big break. I know it was something bigger than the squirrel that made that loud snap. No, I was not freaked out or even close to being. I've heard a cougar run in and out, out in front of. I've had a cougar run out in front of me, and that is possibly what was lurking back there. I thought, at least at the time. But to my surprise, later that morning, it was something much bigger and much more frightening. Even today, I shuddered just thinking that I was walking past a monster of the woods. I know some would never call it that, but my experience with a Bigfoot was with a Bigfoot that did not want me in there. At least that was all I hope it wanted at the time. So yes, the thing to me is a monster of the woods that cannot be trusted. More sounds meant a funny drifter. The sun was up, not over the mountains beyond just yet, but after about 45 minutes or so, it was clear enough to see up towards the road across the river. However, the forest behind me was still too dark to see too far into. I would know because I was looking over my shoulder every few minutes or so. More cracking of twigs and limbs came from the shadows. At one point, I swear I heard a sound like a grunt or something. That made me think there was a small black bear or back there or so, and I kept fishing, not worried in the least, however. The noises continued on and off, and every time I would turn and look to see that bear. About an hour in, and the sun was now just over the hills. A drift boat, the first one I'd seen that morning, came floating by. There were two gentlemen, one rowing, of course. The other had no line in the water just yet, but looked like he was getting ready to set one. They both looked up and said hello as they passed. I replied kindly. They were both about 30 yards past me when I heard a kerplunk. The sound of a large rock hitting the water between myself and them could be heard by all of us. They looked back at me. I looked at them, and we all looked back into the trees behind me. I was hoping they did not think I was throwing rocks. I did not think they did a second later. I watched as the guy rowing kept pointing into the tree line at something. The other guy kept his eye, it seemed, on the tree line intently, as if watching something. At that moment I was wondering what in the world is going on. What was in the woods behind me? They disappeared around the bend, and to me it seemed, for a moment there at least, like they were trying to tell me something, even maybe warn me. It would be later. I would learn soon enough. They were warning me. I settled down, grabbed my thermos and coffee, and poured a cup. I then remembered casting my line back in. It was not much longer after that I heard hoots or whooping-like sounds, like whoops, hoots, whatever, just past the tree line behind me. And then, once again, a large tree break. It sounded like a small tree being broken in half and then tossed down. And I mean a young but tall tree, too. 2 to 3 more whoops. Seconds later, and I was, at that point, reeling in my line, with my head looking back over my shoulders. I started to think that those two fishermen were warning me of something they'd seen just before hitting the bend. I reeled in, put my coffee back in my bag, and decided to sit tight for a second. Maybe it was a really big bear that had some cubs or something with her. It did not sound that was it, however. You could just tell. 2 more whoop-like sounds that were clear and crisp could be heard. Then I heard something that would have me scrambling to get over the rocks and back to my car. Growling. I heard the deepest, scariest growl I'd ever heard in my life, and I have heard a lion roar at a nearby animal park before. I was in panic mode for a minute there and scrambling over the large rock outcropping I was on. I knew I had to calm down, though. I knew I was going to have to enter the tree line and hit the trail, and whatever was making that sound was in there too. I had to calm down. I could not show the fear that was running through me like a freight train at that moment. That would possibly set this bear whatever off. Well, what I thought was likely a bear at the time, at least. Funny thing, though, we do not have many incidents of bear issues here, other than garbage raids, and they definitely do not whoop. I knew that in the back of my mind, I had a funny feeling this was probably something much nastier. It was a frigging Bigfoot. What? I got to the trail and was walking quickly. Not too fast, but quick enough to make sure I could cover the 200 to 250 yards I needed to in a short time. I was not on that trail more than a minute when I heard the noises again. The problem was they were up ahead of me. Whatever it was, and I knew that at that point this could not be a bear, was now walking and crashing through the woods to my left down the trail. Then it stopped, and so did I. I could not go on any further at that moment because whatever it was just off the trail up ahead. My heart was pounding, I remember, and I wished I'd brought a gun or something. I took a few more steps and hugging the right side of the trail. Whoosh, crash! From the left side of the trail, about 30 yards up, a large limb from a tree came flying across and crashing through the brush on the right. I was more than freaking out then. I was seriously frightened, to say the least. I heard the walking again and knew this was too big to be a person. But I also knew this thing, whatever it was bipedal. It was coming towards me. So I picked up the pace and a large stick that was sitting on the side of the trail. I kept walking and so did whatever it was. As soon as it reached me, it paralleled me from that point on. I got about 100 yards when I heard the growling again, and that stopped me in my tracks. I did not want to, but I did. I looked to my left, and that is when I saw something I'd never thought in a million years existed. I was staring right at a Bigfoot. Listen, until you see this thing, you have no idea how precarious you are out here in the woods. What a situation you have put yourself in, even when you are mere miles outside of a small town and not exactly in the middle of nowhere. I saw a Bigfoot. It was standing there, swaying back and forth between some trees. It was light out by then, and you could see this thing plain as day in the thickets and trees. Its waist and down were hidden behind the bushes, but this thing had to be no less than 8 feet tall or more. It was all hair. Even most of its face was covered. Around the eyes there were none, and I could see a slightly light grayish skin tone. But the eyes, they were far too dark to see. I'm guessing they were black. Its shoulders were wide and huge, like a solid wall of black. There were no breasts on this thing, so I suppose it was a male. The hair was almost dreaded, kind of like you see on animals that have not bathed in a long time, and the fur or hair gets thick and matted together and rolls. It had a slight V shape to it that I have heard from others, and it's true. Much like a weightlifter or bodybuilder. Only this thing was hands down 3 times bigger than any of them for sure. It looked, well, angry, or at least upset. It was huffing at me, and then I heard the growl again. I looked away immediately and started walking again, all the while praying under my breath that it would not attack me. I looked over my shoulder here and there as it continued to follow me just off the trail. It kept growling, huffing, and yes, throwing small rocks and limbs at me as I walked on. And at one point, it charged me. I had to stop at one point as this Bigfoot seemed to have gotten ahead of me again as I could just see it up ahead. It was squatted down but seemed to be facing in my direction. I thought this was it. I was dead. I was going to be a murder mystery and gossip fodder, a case of a death blamed on a cougar or bear, but not what was real, a Bigfoot. I decided to walk quickly on the opposite side of the trail, actually just off of it. I also picked up a bigger stick just in case. I could stab this thing in the eye with it at least. Not that that would stop it, I thought. But it was all I had. I wished I'd had my gun that day. As I started to walk past it, the large beast of a monster of a thing stood up not 30 feet from me and took 2 steps forward. It screamed. 2 loud, short bursts were like, wow, wow, sound. It moved like lightning. It was so fast. But after it leaned in and screamed, it turned and was out of sight in less than 2 seconds. I ran like that 80s song. I ran so far away and as fast as I could. The fishermen were waiting. Just as I hit the parking lot, I saw those 2 fishermen from the boat. Today they are friends of mine, and they'd like to keep their names out of the story as well, so I won't mention them here. But they were there, walking towards me. They heard the scream and asked if I was okay. I was in a little shock, so they sat me down on the ground near my car for a few minutes. They saw something they could not explain either. However, they did not see the whole thing, just a large human-like shadow walking towards me through the brush from the river. They said it was really tall and was not a person or bear, it was something else. They were yelling to warn me. Well, today, they don't have to do it. They don't have to. They don't have to warn me anymore. It was a Bigfoot. I saw it. I've heard of one other account out this way since then. Nothing hair-raising like mine, but a visual and vocalization by a lady that lives out this way, a little old lady. But I do not get out there anymore, at least not to land fish, or fish from land. A couple of months later, I floated by with the other two, and they pointed out to me where they saw that large shadow walking towards me. I have to say, I thought I was a goner that day. So did they. But I still like to fish, like I said, but I stick closer to town now and out of harm's way. Thanks, Edgar.